Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I spent the last 2+ decades of my life. Back in 2003, when I was in Lompoc, I got into an altercation. A dude from Virginia had owed me money. I was running a poker table in F unit. So this is around the winter of 2003. So he had been dragging me on the payment, and I told him, you need to take care of your business, right? So at that time, I was working in Unicor. In Unicor, back in the days, USP used to have it's a workshop. They had 3 Unicor. They had sign, where you're over there making the street signs and stuff, duck crossing, 55 miles an hour, all that shit. And then there was paint factory. I was never there, so I'm sure they paint shit. And cable. Cable is where they're stripping out the cables, the wires, splitting them up and stuff. So you can imagine in the facilities, there's all sorts of tools, from razor blades, screwdrivers, to hammers and all the rest. Well, back then, I've only been in the system for a few years, and the dude he's been owing me money. So when we were at work, I went up and told him, I said, hey man, when we get back to the shop, when we get back to the unit, I want my money. Well, as soon as I said that, he pops me in my mouth. Boom, hits me in my mouth, knocks my glasses off, and I'm pretty blind without these glasses, but we're only about 2-3 feet from each other. Because when he hit me, I bounced back. But in my mind, I'm gonna whoop this dude, right? I know how to fight a little bit, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna whoop the shit out of this dude. So I go towards him, and as I'm going towards him, he pulls out a hammer. So I'm like, okay, maybe he's not so dumb, right? But when he pulls out the hammer, I rush him. I get under his swing, but he ends up hitting me in the back of the head with a hammer. And if anybody knows anything about head wounds, they leak, right? So nothing much came of it, because after he hit me in the head with a hammer, I tackled him down to the ground, but it's during the winter, so I had my big coat on, and he just wrapped his arm around my coat and was holding my sleeve. So all we did was tossed around, rolled around on the ground for a minute or two until I was able to get away and get on top of him. But by the time I got on top of him, he's holding on to me, and I'm trying to find the hammer that dropped, because I got hit in the head with the hammer. I'm trying to return the favor. But before I was able to do anything, we got rushed by the COs, cuffed up, and taken to the SHU. Now I go to the SHU. I spent about 6-7 months in the SHU, but I could have came out after 30 days. But the SIS, they wanted me to make a statement. So they come, I think the SIS at the time was named Coco. I think he was like a Filipino dude. So he comes over there. He's like, hey man, we already know what happened. He owed you some money, and you were pressing for the money, and this and that. I said, is that the story? Are you confirming the story? And I wouldn't say anything. I said, listen, man, you already know I'm not going to make a statement. I'm not going to say nothing about this. You do what you do. So they're like, all right, fine. They sent me back to my cell. So they came every 30 days. They're like, well, we can release you right now, but we need a statement. I have to have a statement in order for the captain to sign off on you. So the reason I stayed in the SHU for 6 months is because every time they came to try to interview me, I refused. And I go in the room and I tell them I don't got nothing to say. I'm definitely not writing anything down in my own handwriting for any type of statement. For me, anytime you speak and cooperate with the authority, you're telling. I'm already in the situation. I know what it is. If they want to drag me out for a year, they drag me out for a year. If they want to kick me out, they kick me out. I don't care. But I'm not going to give a statement, you know. Because even, you know, a lot of people is like, well, they already knew everything already, so I just told them what they already knew. Whatever. If they knew everything already, then they don't need to hear it from you, you know. So they end up shipping the dude out from Virginia out, and I end up staying in the shoe for 6 months. But the story I'm about to share with you is not that. It's what happened while I was in the shoe with the homies. So when I come out, the homie Billy from Utah, he pulls me up and he tells me that they had a really sticky situation with Black Bob, the Black Hand, right? So what happened, I had a homie named Joe, big old Hawaiian dude that was living in M Block. And while he was living there was a Sereno in there that he was fucking with. Now, I always tell you guys, like when it comes to the Black Hand, they want their issue. They get a third of everything that comes through that door that has anything to do with their homeboys. Whether you go into the visiting room, bring a package back, you got to break them off. They get a third. Whether you're running a ticket on a yard, they get a third. Whatever you're doing, whatever you hustling, they get a piece of it. And it's not by volunteer. It's Mando. Like, this is what they got coming. This is what they expect. And this is what they insist on. Right? So, my homeboy Joe, he was fucking with this Sereno. And he went up to this, then the Sereno came to my homeboy and made him a proposal. And was like, hey, look, man, I be hitting and stuff. I'll give it all to you. You can move it or whatever and just send me the money, what I want for it, this and that. Well, the homie Joe, at that time, before I went to the shoe, he only been on the yard for about 5-6 months. So he's new to the politics, especially, you know, we give him our politics, but he's new to how these different organizations run. So he's like, cool. So every time a Sereno hit, he'd give the dope to my homie, and my homie would push it, right? But see, the thing I try to tell people in the penitentiary, there's no such thing, you know, there's no secrets. Because for you to be able to move it, somewhere along the line, you have to deal with somebody else, right? And I don't want to say that everybody got spies, but everybody is a spy. Especially when you're in that type of organization, people are watching your moves. Because, they can put 2 and 2 together. So it came to a point where Billy, the story that Billy was telling me was he came off the yard one day and he was going to his cell. And when he got to his room, Black Bob was sitting on his bed, already. And, when I was in Lompoc, Black Bob was the dude as far as all the gangs and all the big homies or whatever, even with the other Black Hands, he was that dude. He outranked everybody else as far as status, as far as his history or whatever. Like, he's a legend in his own right? And he's a serious individual. I've shared stories with him about him, in my earlier videos. But the homie Billy goes to the cell and Black Bob is sitting on his bunk. So, of course, the homie's like, damn, what's going on? Because, somebody's not going to just go in your cell and then park their ass on your bunk, right? So when Black Bob sees him, he waves him in, tell him to sit down in a chair while Black Bob's on his bunk. And he tells the homie Billy, he says, hey, I'm gonna ask you this one time. And Billy's like, all right. Like, you guys getting dope from one of my homeboys? And Billy, so before he gave me the answer, I was like, so what'd you tell him? He's like, shit, what can I tell him? I told him, yeah, right? And he told him who it was. Because, you know, when I was in Atwater, I kind of had the same situation with one of the Serranos that was in my block. Little dude. But in Atwater, they don't got no big homies. They don't got no black hands on that yard. But there's still a black hand that claims that yard. He might be in another penitentiary, but he's claiming that yard. So whatever's going on in that yard, he's got people on that yard collecting for him. So I had the Serrano dude come to me, and he's like, hey man, because they had a new shot caller that came on the compound. He wasn't a black hand, but he was like upper echelon, you know, next in line to get into the books. And he's like, well, they got this dude, I'm gonna see how he's operating and this and that. We're going out to the yard and he's gonna give us the law. So when he comes back from the yard, I was like, what's up? He goes, man, you know, I be out there risking my, you know, risking catching a case to hustle to feed my family, this and that. And I ain't trying to just break off a motherfucker that ain't even on this compound. I'm like, okay, so what you talking about? It's like, look, man, I hit every week. I can come and give it to you, and you can move it around and this and that, and you're shooting my money. I was like, well, what's the breakdown? So at the time when we was in Atwater, a gram would go for about $500. But from a gram, you can break it down to like $30, $100 pieces, you know, because, you know, demand is, you know, supply and demand. When things are scarce, when there's a scarcity, I think that's the word, prices go up. And there wasn't a lot of stuff going on in Atwater, you know, so at a time that we're having this conversation. So he was like, look, you can make you know, $3,000 off of each gram. He goes, you keep 1,000 and shoot me 2. And I'm looking at this dude, right? So I'm like, okay, so you want me to do all the work, send you the bigger chunk, and take the risk of crashing with your homies if your homies find out, right? So anyway, I'm like, nah, man, I'm good. Because I was tempted, but the breakdown wasn't, you know, the way that it was beneficial to me to take on all the risk that was involved. You know, I've had plenty of people that when they come in, they don't want their homies to know what they're doing and all this, and they pass it on to me to help me move it and all that. I don't got no issues with that. But at the same time, you know, I'm aware of who they are, what they're involved with, who they're involved with, and what the politics is. But at no time during the course of my bid when I was on the California yard did I ever do that with any of the Serranos, because one, I had respect for the black hands that was on the compound. Some of them were my friends. So I'm not gonna go undercut them when I know that you signed up for this. And this is the protocol, this is your rules, this is your law. This is how you're able to operate. You know, the black hand and the Serranos, they create an umbrella for you to hustle. Yeah, maybe a third of whatever you're making is a big ass chunk, but that's what you signed up for. But without them, you wouldn't be able to move around unmolested and all the rest of it. Because, yeah, you got 300-400 motherfuckers on a compound or whatever, but not all of them are cold-blooded killers. You know what I mean? There's enough of them that are, but not all of them are. But even to the lowest one at the totem pole, they're able to move around because they're associated with this organization to be able to do what they want to do. And at the end of the day, for me, it's about respect. You know, I've had situations with other dudes, but I don't know their homies. I don't fuck with their homies. So when they come to me and they're like, hey man, this is what I got, can you help me out, this and that, yeah, I help them out. And I do what I do as long as it's beneficial to me too. But if they're trying to ask me to undercut somebody that I fuck with, somebody that I respect, I'm not getting, get involved in it. So when I asked the homie Billy, I was like, well, what you tell Bob? I said, man, I told him, but shit. I was like, at first, for me, this is my first encounter with the situation. At first, I was just like, man, why you give up the dude that's helping you hustle? But then he explained to me what I just explained to you. Man, that's their organization. That's their rules. And, they want their issue, and somebody shouldn't be trying to freaking go doing the roundabout on them. And that was what Black Bob told him. He's like, hey, man, these are my people. They belong to me. This is my yard. What they got coming in, I get my issue, because he felt like, and justifiably, that he's put in the work, that he's earned his position, and that he's got everything that he's got coming. Those are the laws that they laid out. And for somebody to go around him, to undercut him, he's not cool with that. He can't be. Because if he allows somebody else to do that, and that person doesn't get dealt with, then none of his homies going to pay him tribute. None of the big homies going to get their issue or whatever they got coming. You can't have laws and rules if you don't have the means and the wills to enforce it. Nothing happened to that dude, because dude got wind of it, and he ended up checking in. He ended up breaking into the homie Joe's locker, fucked up all his shit, took all his stamps and stuff that the homie had in the locker or whatever, tore up his room, and went and checked in. But that encounter was a lesson learned for my homeboy Joe. Like, he's a big Hawaiian dude. Like, he didn't act like he was tough or anything. He was a really cool dude. But he was just more like happy-go-lucky, thinking that there's no repercussions to things that he's doing in there. And this was a rude awakening for him, that it gets serious real fast, especially when it comes to this type of politics, especially when it comes to, depriving somebody of what they got coming, But we had a good relationship with them. I was a good friend with Topo. I fucked with Gato and me. And on certain situations that we had with the Sereños or whatever, when it's in my block, Black Bob's in there, the homies would send me to go speak to him, because me and him kind of had a rapport. We weren't like buddies or anything like that. He was an older gentleman, but they knew that through the course of the time, the way that we interact, that he had respect for me. So when there was an issue or whatever, they would ask me to go speak in their behalf, to go holler at Black Bob, right? But the point of the story is, man, is you just got to be aware of who you're dealing with. And there's people in the prisons that are serious individuals. For me, when you're young, you're impressionable. But I got to a point in my life where I understood that and recognized that, hey, what someone can do to me, I can easily do to them. So for me, it wasn't about fear. It wasn't about being afraid of someone or another group. But it's always about respect. You can't expect somebody to respect you if you're not respecting their protocols, if you're not respecting their rules and their laws. There's no reason to respect me if I'm helping one of their homeboys to undercut them and do things behind their back. So when it comes to things like that, I stay away from it, because, when you get grimy, when you start doing things behind people's back and stuff, one, it's a mark on your character, you know. And two, it's almost a betrayal because if I'm sitting here telling you that I was good friends with this guy or these groups, but then in the background, I'm doing things to undermine their authority or undercut their, them and whatever they're doing, then my relationship, my friendship with them isn't genuine because obviously I'm faking because I'm not respecting, their rules and their laws. And for me, through the course of my time, the reason that I'm able to do the things that I do, the reason I'm able to be on here, YouTube, to speak and share these stories is because I believe that I've conducted myself the way I'm supposed to my whole bit. That's not to say I haven't made mistakes, but I make it once, that's it. Just like when I got hit in the head with the hammer, after that, I learned my lesson knowing that I'm not going to go press somebody for my money. I'm going to ask them if they're going to pay me. I let them pay me. If they're not going to pay me, then I either bust their fucking head or never bring it up again. Because if I'm running around talking about, oh, that dude over there owes me money, well, all the people that I tell that to just sees that, damn, you's a chump because nobody wants to pay you. So if I have to forgive a debt or forget a debt, I'm not going to speak on it because it's just going to make me look stupid. That's like somebody coming to you telling about, man, that fool disrespected me. Well, if he disrespected you, his jaw should be, hanging on the side of his face. And if it's not, then maybe you are whatever he's saying that to disrespect you. For me, there's been times where I had to swallow my pride. I had to walk away. But it wasn't out of fear. It was out of just evaluating the situation, if it's worth it or not. But once I made that decision, I've never spoke on it. Nobody knows anything. Nobody's ever heard me complain about anybody disrespecting me or anybody not paying me or any of that. But for the most part, I would say, let's just say 90, 95%, most of my dealings has always been kosher. You're always going to run into one of them dude boys that think they're whatever. But at the end of the day, those dudes that didn't do their part on any dealings that I had with them, it didn't turn out good for them. And it wasn't by my hands, but when you do something to somebody, obviously you're probably doing it to somebody else. And maybe somebody else couldn't afford to take the loss. Or maybe somebody else, put a higher value on that transaction than I did. And eventually, they get what they got coming. At the end of the day, if you respect the people that you deal with, then you have to respect their politics. And you can't do things to undermine them. If not, then you're just faking. Welcome to the USP.